Well, hello.
Good morning.
I'm having eye issues, aren't you?
Yeah, I am as well. Just coincidentally, I think I don't know. I think the tears are just being forced at this point, just forced out of us, for this month of putridness.
But we're gonna get into tragic things today.
Yes.
Yes.
Back.
Talking
Yeah.
about the bright eyes.
Yes. I'm very excited for this episode.
Yes. And our little special thing that we're gonna do for everyone at the end.
Yes. A little treat this week.
All right.
So,
well, let's get into
started.
it. Yeah. Well, hello, Levi.
All right, we are back again.
Yes, I'm your hostess, Virginia Clem Poe.
I'm Levi Leland, as you may or may not know.
Yes, and if they don't know by now, shame.
They should, yes.
It's been a very busy week for the both
famous.
of us. Yes, no, you are practically famous.
Yeah, we've had a week. Oh,
look what just happened.
And we have a guest speaker today.
Yes, this is Mr. Elliot. Mr. Elliot's going to give us a lot of information about absolutely nothing but naps.
He's a heartbreaker.
He is a heartbreaker.
Very appropriate for this month.
He is very much a heartbreaker.
Master at Vinegar Valentines.
Oh no. Well, he was with us during our first episode. You just couldn't see him, but that was the cat I was petting because he was curled up in my lap asleep because he was being very bad before we started the podcast. This week has been kind of crazy, kind of nuts. A lot of fun things and not so fun things that have happened. Mm-hmm. But of course, we got to start our week off with that lovely presentation that Poe Baltimore and the Poe Museum brought for us with, in her own words. It was amazing. And if you missed it, shame on you, but it is on YouTube.
Yeah, you're in luck. It's recorded. It's on YouTube. Definitely check it out.
Yes, absolutely.
Because it's worth seeing. You'll learn a lot. They talk about a lot of the things we talked about in our little tribute podcast to her, but with much more elaboration. So.
Oh yeah. No, it was an in-depth, very in-depth discussion. Yeah. Very well done. Very well done. Bravo all around.
Yep.
It kind of made me miss some of our OGs.
Yeah. Our little circle of Poe freaks.
So we're just going to I'm going to do like a romper room kind of thing. So I see Sherry and I see Britt and I see Jess and I see Roger. I just name dropped.
Yeah, that's okay. They know
Hi,
who
guys.
They are.
We miss you.
Hopefully you're watching and, just know you're in our thoughts and
always
you're with us through these podcasts,
evermore.
If it wasn't for, our little circle there from that very beginning stage of the fandom. I mean, we've fueled each other's fires all these years. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. So continuing in with the mush, I just have to say, so I'm sure everyone sees that I am drinking tea every time we do these. I love tea. I also love coffee, but when I'm doing this, I feel like I need to be donning a cup of tea. So cup of tea is in hand. And this happens to be from one of my favorite tea places in all of the world, which is Jolie's Tea Room in wonderful, beautiful. If I could just pack up and move there in a second, in a heartbeat, and have a job ready to go, I would. Salem, Massachusetts. It is like my favoriteest place to be outside of New Orleans. But this is their St. Valentine's brew, and it's amazing, and it's got lots of rose and black tea, and it's just, it's heaven. It's heaven in a
Sounds like a
cup.
perfect balance for the month of February,
It
right?
is. It's like black,
Yeah, it's
but
got the
it's
darkness. It's very
got the
poetic, I guess.
softness,
Mhm.
and the flowery of the rose, but it's
Yeah,
got that black bitterness.
right.
Yeah.
Darkness to
Yeah,
overcome it all, you know? Very,
exactly.
very fit for a Poe tale or a Poe
Very.
poem,
Oh, how apropos.
right?
Oh, we're terrible.
Yeah, our
And
listeners are
then
gonna
of
get a little
course,
treat today, at the
yes,
end of this
they
podcast,
absolutely are.
so
Yep, we're going to be doing something a little different. We're kind of
yeah.
reversing how we normally do things in
Mhm.
our podcast today. I'm actually going to be talking about our like historical 1800s kind of like thing that fits in with all of this. And we're going to be reading Annabelle Lee at the end of this episode, which is I'm very excited about.
Yeah.
We're doing it
And
together.
many,
It's so
many
fun.
listeners probably have heard it, even if they're not, the
Oh, there's
diehard Poe fans, or this is one of the
so many
popular
different
poems.
renditions.
And yeah,
Yeah.
you've all heard it at some point, so
Mm-hmm.
you know
But we're gonna
you're
read it.
familiar with it. Yes, yeah,
Yeah, but we're gonna read it today. And also just want to give a quick shout out. Psh, I got my tarot deck, and we're going to be using that in some upcoming episodes. Very excited. Thank you, Trisha. So yeah, but today, before we get into that poem of Annabelle Lee, it's, one of the things that we know about the poem itself, and this is something that is heavily debated. I want to say this is probably the most debated thing outside of what actually took my darling Edgar away from this world. Elliot, can we not snore during the podcast, pumpkin?
It's just adding some sound effects for the
He did. He's
for the
making his
dramatic
presence
effect.
known, sweet boy. So there are many women who claimed that they were the one and only Annabelle Lee.
The Annabelle Lee, yep.
But there's a line in Annabelle Lee that much reflects another line in another place. Actually, there's a couple places where this line gets used. We'll be talking about those further on down the year as well. But talking about the bright eyes.
Yes.
And how does this fit into what I am about to discuss, which is the tradition of giving a eye miniature, or what later got penned in the 1900s, actually by an American, as lover's eyes. So many of you may or may not know that once upon a time, the giving of miniature portraits, they were oftentimes necklaces, brooches, rings, even bracelets. Most commonly, though, brooches or some kind of pin that could be worn on clothing of a loved one or even a child. Many people had them like when they had to travel long distances, and oftentimes they were also backed with hair of that very person that it was painted of. Now, the tradition of the eyes or the eye being painted, generally it was done on ivory. Most of them are quite tiny, like not even the size of like a pinky nail, which is insane to think about.
Right. To paint so much detail in
Right.
that
I mean, so I actually
size.
am wearing a portrait, a miniature portrait that I made years ago. And I don't know how well anyone can see it because I'm a little far away. And the thing that I coated it with gives quite too much shine in bright lights. But that is indeed Edgar. And it is surrounded by pearls. Yes, exactly. Who else? I always carry my husband with me everywhere. So it is surrounded by pearls, and I'm going to get into that in just a moment. But the actual giving of miniature eyes, these anonymous eyes, as they were sometimes referred to, also happened in the late 1700s. It was pretty much started by who we knew at that time as the Prince of Wales, who later became George IV, King of England. And he actually had this portrait of his eye painted as a little gift for a twice-widowed woman named Mariah Fitzherbert. And she unfortunately was a Catholic at that time. That was very frowned upon in England. They were well, not really secretly married, but they were married. And of course, because the marriage was not approved of by the current King George at that time, of course, that marriage was pretty much absolved and swept under the rug. But when he proposed to her the first time, she kind of like, and kind of took off, got out of there because she didn't want to cause a scandal. But he was so intent on having her become his wife that he actually sent her a second proposal in the form of a letter. And in with that letter came this miniature portrait of his eye, just his eye. And they believe that that letter and that pendant became why she was like, oh, okay, because she later, to him, sent a miniature portrait of her own eyes. It was just her eyes. It was kind of like from the side. So it's very, very
interesting.
I find
take.
it very romantic.
Yeah.
So of course, anytime, and they were so small because they were meant to be held, like especially with the miniature portraits, they were meant to be able to be held in the palm of your hand, so that if you wanted to clasp it to your chest, you could, to feel closer to the person that you were away from. Many sailors had them. Another tie-in to today, much with the sea. So they had these, images of their loved ones, their children, or even they were also part of mourning jewelry. Not M-O-R, M-O-U-R. So, and that's where the pearls come in. So especially with the mourning jewelry, if it were surrounded by pearls, that usually signified tears, because either you were very far away from the person that you loved or they were gone. And also sometimes they even went a step farther by having a teardrop or two coming from the eye of the portrait itself. And usually I believe those were diamonds, some type of diamond anyhow, that were fixed into it.
Very elegant.
Very, very elegant. And some of especially with the brooches were very ornate. And like I said, the portraits are very, very tiny, but there was all this like fabulousness, surrounding it. There aren't many originals that still exist. This tradition of giving the lover's eye or the eye miniatures did continue from the 1780s, clear up into the Victorian era. Queen Victoria herself.
Queen Victoria.
Yes. Oh God. Wrong queen. So great grandmama. Great. So yes. So anyhow, Victoria actually had miniatures painted of her own children. And I believe she even had one of Albert. And I think it was just his eyes. So, it was something that continued for a while, and then it kind of died off. They didn't quite practice it as much. It's had resurgences over the years. I actually do have a piece that I made that's just someone's eyes. But it's in my jewelry box. So in any case, it was a very beautiful, very private way, especially if you had someone in your life that you didn't want folks to know about yet, or if it was just
hush hush.
Yes, very hush hush. Sometimes these portraits were also like encased in lockets, so you couldn't necessarily see it unless you opened up the locket. And even with the eye miniatures themselves, sometimes they were also backed with that person's hair, or maybe their hair was used within the actual miniature itself to create the hair of the person that the miniature was being painted of. And of course, miniatures were quite sought after. Why this fell out of fashion, I have no idea. I personally think it's an absolutely beautiful and romantic thing to have. Henceforth, why I made my own miniature. Now, mine is quite big in comparison to some of the other miniatures.
Yeah,
that
honestly,
get done.
it's incredible how the
But,
detail and the artistry it took in that era to create these miniature portraits. It's amazing.
And many of them were painted on ivory. So it's
right.
it's insane to think, like, when you actually see them. For anyone in the United States, if you're on the Eastern Seaboard, there are quite a few in the collection at the Philadelphia Art Museum, where the Rocky Stairs are. So there's quite a few of them there. I believe I have seen those before there. I sometimes get my museums confused.
There's so many. There's so many great ones. Yeah.
But actually, with the Pre-Raphaelites, there was a resurgence of miniature portrait painting for jewelry that happened. And the last I checked, when I was there last, had they moved? They had moved them. Oh, that was very sad. I was very saddened by that. The Delaware Art Museum actually has a Pre-Raphaelite wing. It's no longer as big as it once was, which is kind of sad. But it is still in their collection. They just don't have it out at the moment. But they do have a collection of miniature portraits, which are amazing. I mean,
Definitely
they're like, some of them are
worth
like
checking out. Yeah.
Some of them aren't even as big as my one of Edgar that I have. So they're really amazing. They're really amazing. And it's like, oh, sets my heart aflutter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like the women that, thought they were Annabelle Lee, and that they thought that poem was about them. Their heart fluttered at the thought, Yeah. And I think,
are those my eyes you're speaking of?
Right. Are those my eyes? 3 women come to mind.
Yes.
The first one, I'll start with the most obvious one.
Yes.
Virginia.
Of course.
They
are my eyes, by the way.
Yes. And as Virginia stated earlier in the podcast, that the bright eyes in the poem, Poe mentions the bright eyes of Annabelle Lee, and we saw in one of our previous podcasts, the Poe tale. Why is it slipping my mind? Eleonora.
Yeah.
I was like, I almost said, all the Poe women were going through my head. What name was it? Eleonora. That was essentially a autobiographical tale, and in it, the female character, who was Virginia, the narrator, who was Poe, describes her, with bright eyes. So, that's one clue. The second clue was I was a child, she was a child. And, while Virginia was a child, essentially, when they first met, Poe was not a child, but I think their relationship was very childlike. It was very playful. It was very fun, and it was
imaginative
in a family, type of state. It
Correct.
was. So that's another clue. But another woman that could justify that would be Elmira Royster,
Correct.
who also is one of the women that could very potentially be his Annabelle Lee for again, a few reasons. One, she was a child and he was a child when they met.
When they knew each other.
They were both very young when they knew each other, and when they had their secret engagement before Poe went off to college.
Yeah, the first time.
Right, right. The first time and not the last time.
No.
And again, in the poem, one thing that comes up is, her highborn kinsman bore her away from me. And,
Mm-hmm.
while that doesn't, for Virginia, that could mean, okay, her highborn kinsman, and that could be kind of a euphemism for, God in the heavens and, took her away. So,
Mm-hmm.
died. But for Elmira, it could very well mean, her well-to-do family, who
Sure.
her father, who intercepted the letters that Poe was sending
Mm-hmm.
from college and pretty much made Elmira believe that Poe had forgotten about her and didn't want anything to do with her. So,
Right.
when he mentions that in the poem, it could very well relate to Elmira in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing, kind of the cincher for me with the Elmira case, is that Poe intended Annabelle Lee to be published with his wedding announcement to Elmira.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, he died
Right.
before that wedding took place and before the wedding announcement was even published.
Yeah.
So the poem ended up being published with his obituary.
Correct.
But the fact that Poe had intended it to be published with his wedding announcement to Elmira is another clue, another justification
Sure.
for the Elmira case, that, okay,
Sure.
maybe the poem was kind of a tribute to her,
Right.
So it's just
Which
another.
makes sense. I mean, it makes
It's a good
absolute
argument.
sense.
It's a valid
Mm-hmm.
argument for those who are on the Elmira team,
Right.
Um, And then the last woman I'm going to mention who comes to mind, which, God bless her, I love her, but I don't think she's got a case here. But
She never had a case.
she never had a case. But
Just saying.
for any of the listeners or the viewers who don't know, I'm a born and raised Rhode Islander and still native to the state. And if you don't know who in Rhode Island has a good Poe connection, is Sarah Helen Whitman. And I'm kind of the representative for her in this state and for Poe's connection. So I'm
Right.
very biased. I'm very much obsessed with Sarah Helen Whitman. I must say my house is decorated with half Poe, half Sarah Helen Whitman. So
Nothing wrong with that.
nothing wrong with that. My opinion is very biased, but I'm still saying she was not the Annabelle Lee, but she thought she
No.
was. And
Right.
I guess in her case, now the main reason why she thought she was his Annabelle Lee was because after their breakup, she published a poem, Our Island of Dreams. And in the poem, there's a line where she
Right.
says, "The night wind blew cold on my desolate heart." That's it. That was the line.
Yeah.
So she thought that Poe's Annabelle Lee was written in response to her poem, where he says, the wind came out of the cloud by night, chilling and killing my Annabelle Lee.
Sure.
That's it. That's the
Right,
only reason why.
right.
But she
Right.
because Helen was another literary person, in a counterpart for him,
Sure.
as opposed to a lot of the other women that he was, kind of involved with. She had a prowess in
Sure.
in poetry and
Right. She was
so
highly respected.
right. So I guess it's only fair that she assumed that his poem was a response to her poem, and it was kind of like a back and forth,
Sure.
poetically. So
Right.
that was kind of her claim. And I guess the line, her highborn kinsman came and bore her away from me, could very well make sense for Sarah Helen Whitman as well, because her mother was kind of well-to-do in a way, not really, but she was,
right. But she was affluential.
Yeah, exactly. And she had money. So, and she was the one that kind of put the whole kibosh on, on the relationship.
Right.
So, I guess,
thou shalt not pass.
yeah, she was like, no way. So, in that sense, Annabelle Lee could, Sarah Helen Whitman does have a case there, but
exactly.
Virginia Clem Poe was his Annabelle Lee. I don't think anyone can really dispute it with enough, passion. because there's just
Exactly.
too much in it to point to Virginia.
Right.
And, but we'll never know. We'll never know for sure. And, one thing that was mentioned during the Poe Baltimore's event, in her own words, last Monday, was that, I think it was Dean that said, Annabelle Lee might not really be any particular person, any particular woman. It could just be kind of, Poe's culmination of the loves and the women in his life and the losses in his life. And it could very well just be that. It could just be, a fictional character, but inspired by the many women and the many tragedies that he faced with these women,
Sure.
in one poem, so we'll never know for sure, but
Right.
you know,
But we have a beautiful poem
but we have
because
a
of
beautiful
it.
poem because of it. Yeah,
So,
exactly. So it doesn't, in the grand scheme, it doesn't really matter. It's just a beautiful piece of, poetry, and
and we're
it
going to
was
read
just
it.
inspired by, it was inspired by someone and something, and
And
maybe
someone's beautiful
everything in
bright
between,
eyes.
and someone's beautiful bright eyes. So yes, so we can definitely go ahead and share
Yeah, we absolutely can. So,
for our grand finale here.
I'm about to do this. Wait. Okay.
There you go.
I've
All right,
got
now,
I've
shh,
got
no
my
talking
eyes
in the
on now.
library.
No, shh. Okay. Yeah, so we're going to do this. I'm actually reading from an actual book. Oh my gosh. Who
Very
knew?
cool.
Who knew? All righty. So, actually, yeah, because I really can't do this without these, but God, that glare is annoying. All right. So, Levi, you are starting, my dear.
Alrighty. So, Annabelle Lee, published 1849, posthumously, by Edgar Allan Poe. It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea that a maiden there lived whom you may know by the name of Annabelle Lee. And this maiden, she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me.
I was a child, and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea. But we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Annabelle Lee. With a love that the winged seraphis of heaven coveted, her and me.
And this was the reason that long ago in this kingdom by the sea, a wind blew out of a cloud, chilling my beautiful Annabelle Lee, so that her high-born kinsman came and bore her away from me, to shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea.
The angels, not half so happy in heaven, went inveighing her and me. Yes, that is the reason, as all men know, in this kingdom by the sea, that the wind came out of the cold by night, chilling and killing my Annabelle Lee.
But our love, it was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, of many far wiser than we. And neither the angels in heaven above nor the demons down under the sea can ever dissever my soul from the soul of the beautiful Annabelle Lee.
For the moon never beams without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabelle Lee. And the stars never rise, but I feel the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabelle Lee. And so all the night tide I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride, in her sepulchre by the sea, in her tomb by the sounding sea. Thank you, Levi. That was fun.
Yes,
we have to do that more often.
Right. We should maybe
That's going to be a thing.
Poem podcast.
Yes.
Very well done. I think that was a little treat, a little something different for the listeners. So,
well, I guess that's it for us today.
yes.
And we hope you join us next week. And so thank you, everyone who's given us some feedback, little advices. And oh my gosh, talk about having listeners in the UK. We've made it in Japan.
Right.
You know,
We
and
really
even in South
appreciate
America and Colombia. That's so
yeah,
awesome. Thank you
that is really
all.
cool. We appreciate the interest and the support always.
Yes. Well, here's to hoping that next week will be the last of our eye problems.
Yeah. Let's hope. And I don't have to be backlit like an angel here to hide,
Yes, I hope
any.
not. I hope not. And I found us robin's eggs. So, score.
Thank God. Finally, it's that
Finally,
time.
it's coming. The bunnies are coming. Okay. Well, we're going to let you all go. Thank you for joining us today
Thank you
at
all.
Beyond the Oblong Box. Of course, find us on Facebook, on Instagram. We do have a secret little group for members of the Oblong Box. It's called Inside the Oblong Box. If you find that group, just hit the invite and we'll let you in.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So we'll see everyone next week for our final installment of For the Love of Edgar, or For the Love of Poe is what I deemed it. But we're going to be discussing a one Miss Sarah Helen Whitman.
Yes.
And a certain Valentine. So,
Glad
and
I
that
could
will
kind
be
of
the end of
introduce her this
Valentine's
episode.
and we're done.
And yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All righty.
Very exciting. It should be good. So definitely tune in.
Tune in. Everyone join us then, and we will see everyone next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.